Hi, 5th grade. We're moving on to our next flip lesson where we are going to actually begin Chapter 3, where we are going to learn about how to divide by a one-digit divisor. Before we actually get into standard long division that I know you guys have seen before, we want to understand some tips and tricks that we can use as we move forward through the remainder of our chapter. So we're going to start there today. The two major concepts that we're going to focus on today and that we're going to understand is make connections between what we already know about multiplication and division. We're going to come to know those connections as fact families, and we're also going to talk today about the zero trick of division. If you remember when we did our multiplication chapter, we did learn a little bit of a zero trick to help some mental multiplication be a little bit easier. We're going to kind of do the same thing and give ourselves a zero trick that we can use when dividing. Let's get started. So the first question we want to be able to answer, guys, is how are multiplication and division actually related? Well, the first thing we're going to talk about to try to make that connection are something called fact families. Fact families are a group of related facts that use the same numbers. Might sound a little complicated at first, but once I show you a couple, I think it will make sense. So let's look at the numbers 3, 6, and 18. We want to think in terms of multiplication and division all of the ways that 3, 6, and 18 are related, and then we will have a fact family. So what do I know about multiplication as it relates to fact families, as it relates to the numbers 3, 6, and 18? Well, I know 3 times 6 equals 18. I also know that 6 times 3 is 18. Now, let's jump to division. 3, 6, and 18. What do I know about 3, 6, and 18 as it relates to division? Well, if 3 times 6 equals 18, that means that 18 divided by 6 equals 3. If I know that 6 times 3 equals 18, then I know that 18 divided by 3 equals 6. Those four equations make up my fact family. All of the related facts that use the same numbers, 3, 6, and 18. All right, my friends, now is the time to take out your journals, and you're going to do a little bit of practice on your own. I would like you to, in your journals, write down the fact family, all four equations, multiplication and division equations, that connect the numbers 7, 8, and 56. So take a moment and you should pause the video in your journal, write down the four equations that make up the fact family of the numbers 7, 8, and 56. Hopefully you took a second to pause the video, and if you see inside the orange box, I've actually written down the entire fact family of the numbers 7, 8, and 56. What I want you to do now is actually in your journal create a fact family of your own. You can think of the numbers 7, 7, and 49. You can think of the numbers 6, 2, and 12. Come up with any fact family of your own, write that down in your journal, and we'll check it in tomorrow. So you might be asking yourself, how does understanding fact families and the connection between multiplication and division actually help me understand math or problem solve? Well, check out the word problem below. So if we know that Ellie is putting together gift bags for her Halloween party, she wants to divide 56 pencils equally among 7 gift bags. How many pencils should she put into each bag? Well, since we're not yet moving on to standard long division, where I would set up a traditional long division equation, I want to tap into what I know about fact families. I want to look at the numbers that I've been given. So it seems I have 56 of something, pencils in this case, being divided by 7, being divided among 7 gift bags. So I want to use what I know about fact families to figure out an unknown. I don't know how many pencils she should put into each bag, but if I tap into what I know about fact families, we did it a couple slides ago where we said 7 times 8 was 56, 8 times 7 was 56, 56 divided by 7 was 8, and 56, whoops, sorry, that got a little messy, divided by 8 was 7. So tap into those fact families for a second and recognize something that I saw here. I know that 56 of something divided by 7 equals 8. I didn't even have to use standard long division to solve this problem. So how many pencils should she put in each bag? 8 pencils. So there's the real-life application of how we can use our understanding of fact families and the connection of multiplication and division. So the next thing that we're going to talk about, guys, our second objective here is to understand a pattern that we identified in multiplication that we can actually apply the same concept to division. So check out what I've got here on the left side of my whiteboard. So I have something that should look pretty familiar to you. This should look like what we learned about when we talked about the zero trick in multiplication. When we talked about the zero trick, we talked about finding a base fact and multiplying. If I know 3 times 8 equals 24, 3 times 80, I should be able to identify that base fact of 3 times 8 of 24, check out my zeros in my original equation, and put them into my final answer. Now, the reason why that works is because we talked about numbers that are powers of 10, or multiples of 10. So 80 is a multiple of 10, as is 800. So our zero trick can be applied. So same thing down on this third equation. If I find, or look at 3 times 800 equals 2,400, well, I did that because I know my base fact of 3 times 8 equals 24, and I applied my 2 zeros to my final equation. Now, the reason I'm reviewing that is because we're going to connect that directly with a zero trick in division. So let's flip over to the other side of our page here. Let's look at the equations I have set up. 24 divided by 3. If I think back to fact families, what's on the other side here? If I know that 3 times 8 equals 24, then I know that 24 divided by 3 equals 8. Let's check out how that zero trick moves down in division. Well, same trick applies here. Look for a base fact. 24 divided by 3 equals 8. How many zeros were in my original equation? 1. Let's move down to our third. 24 divided by 3, that's a base fact, is 8. 2 zeros in my original equation, 2 zeros in my final answer. So you're seeing some of the same patterns being applied here, just working in the opposite direction. Instead of multiplying to find a product and applying zeros, I'm looking at a division equation, finding a quotient, and then applying zeros. So the same strategy applies there, guys. All right, my friends, now it's time to try it out on your own. So I've listed 3 examples there for you, example 1, 2, and 3. I want you to take a minute and solve these out in your journal. So think about our zero trick in multiplication. Think about how I related that to our zero trick in division. Go ahead and take a minute, find yourself a base fact in each of those equations, and apply your zeros into your final answer. All right, guys, so hopefully you took a second to solve each of those out. Check out my answers, compare with what you got. So I went through and I underlined our base facts that we should have been able to pull out. 9 divided by 3 is 3 with 2 zeros. 45 divided by 9 is 5 with a 0 from the original equation. And, sorry, forgot to do it here. 5 divided by 5 is 1 with 2 zeros in my original equation and 2 zeros in my answer. So our zero trick in division should relate pretty closely with our zero trick in multiplication, which can kind of help us as we move into our division chapter. Alright guys, so this concludes our lesson. At the end of this lesson, hopefully you understand a little bit better the relationship between multiplication and division and how we can connect what we already knew about multiplication and kind of relate that to where we're going with division and problem solving with division. And we also talked today about the zero trick of division and connected that with what we had already learned in multiplication. So be ready tomorrow with your journal. We're going to sit down, we're going to get some good practice, and we're going to talk about an extra added little thing that we are going to add to our zero trick to make some division a little bit easier. See you tomorrow.